18. The offer arrives. Price is only one part of the deal. At 6:42 Sunday evening, Sarah receives an email from Daniel, David Chen's buyer's agent. The subject line says, Offer Reynolds Property. Sarah opens the documents and sees the number Mike has been waiting for, $605,000. Sarah calls Mike and Jennifer and tells them an offer has arrived. Mike's first response is immediate. 605? We're listed at $625,000. Tell them no. Sarah says, Before we do anything, let's read the entire offer. That sentence matters because an offer is much more than the number printed beside the purchase price. Sarah begins reviewing the terms with Mike and Jennifer. David is offering $605,000, but he's also requesting a seller concession toward allowable buyer costs. He wants the refrigerator, washer, dryer, and patio television included. His proposed closing date is approximately 5 weeks away, and the offer contains financing and inspection provisions that need to be understood. Mike interrupts. So he's not really offering $605,000 if he wants us paying some of his costs. That's the right financial question, although Sarah should explain it carefully. The contract price is still $605,000, but a seller concession can affect the Reynolds' estimated proceeds. This is why sellers should evaluate both the price and the financial terms surrounding the price. Let's change the numbers for a moment. Imagine one buyer offers $615,000 but requests $15,000 in seller concessions. Another buyer offers $605,000 with no concession. Which offer is better? You don't have enough information yet. What are the financing terms? What personal property is requested? What is the closing date? What are the contingencies? What are the estimated transaction costs? Does one offer create a greater appraisal concern? Does one buyer's timing work better for the seller? This is why experienced listing agents don't stop reading after page 1. Now, Sarah prepares an estimated seller net sheet so Mike and Jennifer can see how the offer might affect their proceeds. Notice the word estimated. Sarah shouldn't guarantee the exact amount the Reynolds will receive at closing. Payoffs, prorations, title and escrow charges, taxes, concessions, repairs, compensation, and other items may affect the final numbers. The net sheet is a decision-making tool, not a promise. Next, Sarah looks at David's financing information. Mike asks, He's pre-qualified, right? So the loan is guaranteed? No. A lender pre-qualification or similar financing document may provide useful information about the buyer's financing position. But Sarah should not represent it as a guarantee that underwriting is complete or that the loan will definitely fund. Financing can change during a transaction. The lender may still review income, assets, credit, property information, appraisal results, and other requirements. Sarah can explain what the documentation says. She should not turn it into a promise from the buyer's lender. Then Mike notices the earnest money amount. Only $7,500? If David cancels, at least we automatically get that, right? Not necessarily. This is another common misconception. Earnest money is important, but Sarah should not tell Mike that every buyer cancellation automatically results in the seller receiving the earnest money. The outcome depends on the contract, the circumstances, applicable cancellation rights, and potentially a dispute between the parties. This is why agents need to understand the contract, rather than describing earnest money as an automatic penalty. Sarah continues, David wants the refrigerator. No problem, Jennifer says. The washer and dryer? Jennifer looks at Mike. I thought we were taking those. And the patio television? Mike immediately says, absolutely not. Here comes another lesson. Personal property becomes a problem when everyone assumes instead of reading. The listing may have described certain items, the MLS may contain information, and the purchase contract may identify fixtures or personal property. Sarah needs to help the Reynolds review the actual offer and clearly understand what David is requesting before they sign anything. Then they reach the proposed closing date. Jennifer looks at the calendar. That's actually perfect. Our new home should be ready the following week. Suddenly, one term of David's offer becomes very attractive. This is why highest price and best offer are not always synonymous. Imagine another buyer offers $610,000 but needs to close in 14 days when the Reynolds have nowhere to go. Maybe the Reynolds prefer that offer, maybe they don't. Sarah shouldn't make that decision for them. Her job is to explain the trade-offs. Mike says, I don't want him coming back after the inspection asking us for $20,000. Sarah explains that the inspection and due diligence provisions of the contract matter. An accepted contract may give the buyer specific investigation and contractual rights. Sarah should help Mike understand those provisions before he accepts the offer, rather than acting surprised when the buyer later conducts inspections. This is where the disclosure work from Chapter 2 becomes valuable. Sarah and the Reynolds already addressed the roof history, insurance claim, solar documentation, HOA information, and other property matters. That doesn't prevent the buyer from investigating, but it reduces the chance that known information appears for the first time during escrow. After nearly 40 minutes, Mike looks at Sarah. So what do you think we should do? Sarah can provide professional advice. She can discuss the market, competing properties, showing activity, estimated proceeds, contractual terms, and potential risks. But she shouldn't take over the decision. Remember this: don't sell your seller on an offer. Help your seller understand the offer. Now imagine Sarah had received David's $605,000 offer and decided on her own that it was insulting. What if she never showed it to Mike and Jennifer? That's a serious problem. Sarah's personal opinion about the offer does not replace her seller client's decision-making authority. Her fiduciary duties require her to protect and promote the client's interests and communicate appropriately. If an offer arrives, Sarah should follow Arizona law, the seller's lawful instructions, and her brokerage procedures, rather than deciding the seller shouldn't even see it. Mike walks around the kitchen for a moment. Finally, he says, "I'm not taking $605,000 with all those terms." Jennifer asks, "Do you want to reject it?" Mike shakes his head. "No, let's counter." Now the transaction is about to move from evaluating an offer to negotiating one. And that's where agents need to understand something extremely important. A counteroffer isn't simply changing one number and assuming everything else stays exactly the way everyone remembers it. Words matter, terms matter, timing matters, and until the parties actually reach agreement, Sarah needs to be very careful about telling anyone they have a deal. That's where we'll go in Section 16, counteroffers, multiple offers, and when you actually have a contract. Online discussion 1. David offers $605,000 but requests a seller concession. Why should Sarah discuss more than the purchase price with the Reynolds? The concession may affect the seller's estimated proceeds, and the offer also contains financing, timing, inspection, personal property, and other terms that may influence the Reynolds decision. Sarah should help them evaluate the complete offer rather than treating purchase price as the only meaningful term. 2. Mike believes David's earnest money automatically belongs to him if David later cancels. How should Sarah respond? Answer: Sarah should not describe earnest money as an automatic seller payment whenever a buyer cancels. The parties' rights depend on the contract, the reason for cancellation, applicable contractual provisions, and the circumstances. Sarah should explain the contract within her competence and involve her broker or appropriate professionals when a dispute or legal interpretation exceeds her role. 3. Sarah believes $605,000 is too low. Can she simply refuse to present the offer to the Reynolds because she thinks they will reject it? Answer: Sarah should not substitute her own opinion for the seller's decision-making authority. She should handle and communicate offers consistent with her fiduciary duties, the seller's lawful instructions, applicable requirements, and brokerage procedures. Sarah can provide advice about the offer, but the sellers make the decision.